Good evening, everyone. Welcome to 30 minutes of Torah study for the Torah portion of Vayechi. So the Torah portion begins with Yaakov on his deathbed, and he wants to bless all of his children, beginning with his oldest son, Reuven. He begins to give him a beautiful blessing. However, very quickly, it turns into a chastisement. Let's look at the verses themselves. Yaakov says, Reuven, you are my firstborn, my strength, and the first of my might. You should have been superior in rank and superior in power. You have the restlessness of water. Therefore, you shall not have superiority, for you ascended upon your father's couch. Then you profaned him, who ascended upon my bed. What does this mean? Rashi explains. You have the restlessness of water, the restlessness and haste with which you hastened to display your anger, similar to water that hastens on its course. Therefore, you shall not have superiority. You shall no longer receive all these superior positions that were fit for you. Now, what was the restlessness that you exhibited? For you ascended upon your father's couch. Then you profaned that name that ascended my couch. This is the Shekhinah, which was accustomed to going up onto my bed. So Reuven should have been ultimately the king of the Jewish people. The kings of the Jewish people should have descended from the tribe of Reuven. He was the firstborn. That is the natural leadership position. He lost it. Why did he lose it? What's the background? Yaakov had two wives, Rachel and Leah. His plan, his original plan, was to marry Rachel. He fell in love with her, but he got tricked by his father-in-law Love, and he ended up marrying Leah as well. Each one had a maidservant. He married them as well. Yaakov's first love, primary love, was Rachel, and that is where his primary living quarters were set up. When Rachel passed away, he moved his primary living quarters to Bilhah's tent, the maidservant of Rachel. This was very insulting to Reuven. Reuven felt that it was an indignity that Yaakov made his main living quarters with Rachel and not with Leah, his mother, for all the years that they were married. And he felt that finally Rachel has passed away, so Yaakov will move his primary living quarters to the tent of his mother Leah. He did not do so. This bothered, this frustrated, this angered Reuven. He moved Yaakov's bed and his living quarters into his mother's tent. Yaakov was very upset, right? Yaakov said, you are messing with my intimate life. There's a holiness involved over here, and he was demoted, right? This cost him the royalty. So Reuven loses this privilege of having his descendants be the leaders, the kings of the Jewish people, and Yehudah is elevated. Yehudah comes promoted. The Torah says, a cub and a grown lion is Yehudah. From the prey, my son, you withdrew. He crouched, rested like a lion, and like a lion, who will rouse him? The scepter shall not depart from Yehudah, nor the student of the law from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him will be a gathering of peoples. So Yaakov says, not only will you be the leader of the Jewish people and your descendants, but it will never depart from you. That means Mashiach, the ultimate king of the Jewish people, will be a descendant of you. Yehudah earned this. What did he do to deserve it? Well, if you look at the blessing that we just had, it says here in the second line, from the prey, my son, you withdrew. What does that mean, from my prey, my son, you withdrew? Rashi explains, my son, you withdrew. You withdrew yourself and said, what is the gain if we slay our brother and cover up his blood? What is the great claim to fame that elevated Yehudah, that Yaakov mentions, is that when his brothers planned on murdering their brother Yosef, what did Yehudah do? He convinced his siblings not to murder Yosef, but rather to sell him as a slave. As a result of selling him as a slave, in the most literal sense, Yehudah saved the life of his brother Yosef. That's reason number one that he was promoted. But there's another reason. He saved his daughter-in-law's life, Tamar. What was the circumstance? Yehudah's son was married to Tamar. He died without children. Based on the principles of a Levirate marriage, Tamar married his second son. He too died without children. Based on the principle of Levirate marriage, Tamar should have married Yehudah's youngest son. However, he was a bit young, and he felt that maybe it's a little bit dangerous marrying this woman. His son seemed to be dropping dead. So he pushed her off. He said, go back to your father's house when Sheila gets older, then we'll make a marriage happen. Years go by, nothing happens. Yehudah's passing by the territory. Tamar disguises herself as a prostitute. Yehudah solicits her. She becomes pregnant. We had a class about this a few weeks ago. People notice that Yehudah's daughter-in-law, Tamar, is pregnant. She was technically bound to be married to Sheila. This is adultery. So what happens? The people of the town take her out. She is guilty of adultery. Therefore, she must get the death penalty. Tamar quietly tells Yehudah, you know who made me pregnant? It was you. You're the father. Publicly, Yehudah confesses to the crime. Publicly, Yehudah says, I am wrong, she is right, and saves the life of Tamar. So Yehudah makes a public admission, which takes courage. It did not make him look good at all, but he did it, and he saved her life. So if you want to compare and contrast the life of Reuven and the life of Yehudah, we see that Reuven cannot control his impulses. He gets emotional, he gets angry, he acts upon it without thinking about the consequences. Therefore, he is not fit for leadership. Yehudah, on the other hand, is a person who takes responsibility for his actions, and even more than that, his actions actually save lives, the lives of Yosef and the lives of Tamar. Now, based on what I've said so far in the class, would you agree that these are reasons to promote Yehudah due to his incredible righteousness and not Reuven due to some clear character deficiencies? I don't think so. Because if you just think a little bit about the stories, it's not so black and white at all, and it's not so clear that Yehudah is the hero. What do I mean by that? What role did Reuven play when Yosef was kidnapped by his brothers? Reuven actually stood up for his brothers, and he said to his brothers, don't kill him. How could you kill him? Let's, for the meantime, put him in the pit. What was his goal? His goal was to come back and save his life, to actually bring him home. So Reuven's participation in the plan, put him in a pit, don't kill him because I want to save your life. What was Yehudah's participation? He sold him as a slave. His own brother. He literally sold him as a slave. Who's the hero of the story? Reuven, not Yehudah. Yehudah is the kidnapper for profit, while Reuven wanted to save the life of Yehudah. And then you go to story number 2. Yes, Yehudah confessed. Yes, Yehudah admitted that he was the one that was wrong. But let's look at Reuven's relationship with confession and Reuven's relationship with tshuva. When Yosef was sold as a slave, where was Reuven? Did Reuven say anything? Did Reuven comment? Did he try to prevent it? No. You know why? Reuven wasn't there at the time. Why was he not there? Because he was doing teshuvah for his role in moving the bed of his father. Reuven recognized that he was wrong, and he was so bothered by it, he was so affected by it, that this incident took place 9 years after. 9 years after he moved the bed, right, of his father, he was still involved with he was still involved with tshuva. It affected him so deeply on a soul level that he was deeply involved in tshuva so many years later. So number one, the level of teshuvah that Reuven was involved in was tremendous, absolutely tremendous. And not only that, when he returns to the pit and he finds out that Yosef was sold by his brothers, he was absolutely devastated. And Reuven returned to the pits. And behold, Yosef was not in the pits. So he rent his garments. And he returned to his brothers, and he said, the boy is gone. And where will I go? So Reuven is devastated. So now let's compare Reuven and Yehudah once again. Reuven wanted to save the life of Yosef for the purposes of actually bringing him home, so he will be able to live free with his family and with his father. Yehudah saved Yosef for money, literally selling him as a slave. Yehudah, yes, he did tshuva, he confessed for what he did with Tamar, but that was a one-time event. Reuven, on the other hand, was doing a most powerful tshuva for at least 9 years later. Based on this analysis, why was Reuven demoted and Yehudah promoted? It seems wrong, it doesn't make any sense. Reuven seems to be the one more righteous, Yehudah the one with the character flaws. To answer this question, we need to understand, what does it mean to be a Jewish king? What is it all about? What are the character traits that we're looking for? So first of all, a king has some very practical responsibilities: law and order, justice, an army, defending his nation, taxes, the economy, right? For all intents and purposes, the king is literally the boss. He is in charge. He is leading his country in every way, from an economic perspective, from a safety perspective, foreign policy, domestic policy. The king is responsible. The king is the boss. The king is a ruler. In order to have that power, the king has to sit above the rest of the nation. In Tanakh, the king is described as a person who is head and shoulders above the rest of the people. From a spiritual perspective, Kabbalah describes the king as having a unique soul, a soul that has a character trait of royalty, that comes from the divine attribute of Malchus. This unique soul quality and character trait that a king possesses is very different than any of the other character traits that we possess. And I'll give you an example. The character trait of kindness that a person may possess, a very beautiful character trait, it makes no difference if you are in the middle of actually demonstrating kindness to people, or if you are alone by yourself. You have that desire, you have that emotion, you have that feel, you're a kind person. You don't have to be actually doing kindness to be considered a kind person. Even if at that particular moment you're at home, nevertheless, you are a kind person who has that feeling, who has that desire, who has that commitment. You're a kind person. However, when it comes to the divine attribute of royalty, it does not work when you are alone. It necessitates the existence of another person. In order to be a king, you must have a nation. If you do not have a nation, you are simply not a king. You cannot be a king by yourself. That quality will not and cannot express itself. Not only can you not be a king without a nation, but very specifically, the nation has to choose you in order for you to be their king. The Medrash says the nation appoints the king, and the king cannot appoint himself if they do not appoint him. What do you call a person who acts as a king when they were not appointed? That's a dictator. That is not the Jewish concept of a king. A king is a person who is chosen willingly, purposefully by the people to have them lead over him. What this means is a king is subordinate to the people. He needs the people. The job, the mission, the purpose of a king is to do everything for the people. The king has to completely forget about any other agenda, any other desires, any other interests. The king is not there to further his own personal goals. Not at all. The king has one job, which consumes him night and day, 24/7. What can I do to help and to benefit my people, to benefit my nation? The moment the king forgets that, he's no longer fit to be a king. Forfeits the job, forfeits the title. The Rambam describes this in his Code of Jewish Law regarding the laws of kings. Just as the Torah has granted the king great honor and obligated everyone to revere him, so too has it commanded him to be lowly and empty at heart. As it is written regarding King David, my heart is a void within me. That means no ego, no personal agenda. Nor should he treat Israel with overbearing, haughtiness. As it is written, he should not lift up his heart above his brothers. He should be gracious and merciful to the small and the great, involving himself in their good and welfare. He should protect the honor of even the humblest of men. When he speaks to the people as a community, he should speak gently. As it is written, listen, my brothers and my people. Similarly, it is written, if today you will be a servant to these people, he should always conduct himself with great humility. The Torah says you want to be a Jewish king, you have to give up your own identity. Your identity becomes the Jewish people. Everything you do is for the sake of the nation. You cannot be caught up with your own personal agenda. To be a Jewish king means you're hyper-focused on the needs of your people. That is what a Jewish king is all about. Now with this background, let's try to understand why, from this perspective, we demote Reuven and we promote Yehudah for the job. Absolutely, Reuven had good intentions, right? That is not debatable at all, right? Reuven was a good guy and he had good intentions. However, practically speaking, his actions, his behaviors hurt other people. When he moved the bed of his father into his mother's tent, it insulted his father deeply, powerfully. It was very bad. And not only that, he embarrassed his mother terribly. Were his intentions good? Yes, he loved his mother and he was upset about what happened. The result? Insult and an embarrassment to his father and mother. He didn't think about how his actions will impact other people. He was angry, he was frustrated, and he acted. That is not kingly. That's actually very negative and dangerous for a king to behave that way, because it's going to happen that problems, challenges are going to face the king. If the king acts out of anger, acts out of frustration, you don't see the consequences of your actions. You don't see the long-term results. Unintended consequences will result if you don't think it out carefully, and people are going to get hurt. King has to be level-headed. King has to be able to focus. A king has to think, if I enact policy A or policy B, how will it impact the other people that are in the society? The Rebbe writes, Reuven had the restlessness of water, right? That's what his father Yaakov tells him. He has the restlessness of water and hastened to display his anger. After concluding that his father's bed belonged in Leah's tent, he got upset at someone else and acted swiftly and immediately to interfere with his father's bed, thus hurting another person. This behavior is the opposite of helping others. Now let's go to the other incident and explore Reuven's behavior. Reuven wanted to save Yosef. However, you know what happened? He disappeared. Due to his personal piety, his remorse, the tshuva that he wanted to do for messing around with his father's bed, cost Yosef. Instead of being there to prevent Yosef from being sold as a slave and bringing him back home, he was absent because he was dealing with his own spirituality instead of worrying about what's going on with his brothers. Now, Yehudah, his intentions were surely not as pure as Reuven. Reuven wanted to save his life. Yehudah made some money on it. But at the end of the day, what was the result? The result was that Yehudah actually saved the life of Yosef. And when it comes to being a king is a results-oriented job. And from a results perspective, Reuven, yes, sweet guy, complete failure, botched the whole scenario. Yehudah, Maybe his intentions weren't as good, but from a perspective of getting the job done, absolutely the results that we needed were there. He saved the life of Yosef. We have another problem, right? Reuven wanted to save the life of Yosef, and he wanted to return him to his father. Why? Why does he want him to return him to his father? Is it because he loved Yosef so much and he had so much care and concern for him? Rashi says, to save him. The Ruach HaKodesh testifies for Reuven that he said this only to save him so that he would be able to come and take him out of there. He said, I am the firstborn and the eldest of them all. The sin will be attributed only to me. Reuven was worried not to save his brother Yosef. He was part of the plan. He said, if we kill him, you know whose fault it's going to be? My fault. I'm the oldest. My father's going to kill me. Therefore, he wanted to return him home. What does it say in the Chumash? The Torah actually says, and Reuven returned to the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit. So he rent his garments. And he returned to his brothers and said, the boy is gone, and I, where will I go? He doesn't say, oh no, my brother's gone. Poor brother. He doesn't say, oh no, my father, he's going to be so pained. He says, me, what about me? I'm going to be punished. I'm in trouble now. That's his concern. That's his motivation. As Rashi explains, where will I go? Where will I flee from father's pain? Because I'm going to be the one that's blamed. So Reuven's first concern is not so much about saving his brother, but it's about saving himself. This again is not the attitude of a king. A king needs to put themselves aside for the sake of other people. Here in this scenario, ultimately he was thinking about himself. What about tshuva? We discussed Reuven doing tshuva for 9 years, right? And we have Yehudah, right, who kind of did a one-off type of a tshuva. So how do we understand that? So first, the commentators explain, where did Reuven learn how to do tshuva? Where did he learn how to do such a beautiful tshuva? The answer, Yehudah taught him. What does it mean Yehudah taught him? Reuven at first admitted his sin privately. This is the sin of moving his father's bed with sackcloth and fasting, but he did not confess publicly. However, when Yehudah said, she is right, it is for me, Reuven got up and publicly confessed, I too have sinned. I have interfered with my father's bedding. Now the Talmud asks the question, why did Reuven suddenly admit publicly that he was the one who did it? In Judaism, we don't have this thing of like public confession. Nobody needs to know what happened. That's between you, God, and your father. So why did Reuven suddenly admit publicly that he was the one who moved the father's bed? Now, what's the reason? The reason is because he saw Yehudah. The reason that Yehudah did it publicly, he had to save Tamar's life. The only way to save Tamar's life was to admit his sin publicly. Reuven, why did he admit his sin publicly? The Talmud answers that when Yaakov's bed was moved into the tent of Leah, he didn't know who did it. He suspected all of the sons. Any of them could have done it. Any of the 6 sons of Leah could have done it. Even some of the other brothers might have done it. So he was suspicious. He looked at all of them. It was a challenging and a difficult time. All the brothers were suspected. Reuven did not say a word. He felt bad. Privately, he prayed, he tried to change, he tried to become a better person, but nothing publicly. Only when Reuven saw Yehudah's public confession did that actually motivate him to say, you know what? For all these years, there's a friction between my father and my brothers. I will publicly confess, so people will know that it's me and my brothers won't be in trouble. Reuven was so busy dealing with his own personal issues, his own personal tshuva, that he did not realize the pain and suffering that he caused to his brothers by not stepping forward. So Reuven's tshuva had a lot to do with himself. Yehudah, on the other hand, was not about himself. Why did he confess? Because he knew he was wrong, and he had to save the life of Tamar. That is how a king acts. That is how a king behaves. The focus is the life of another. This is why Reuven was demoted. This is why Yehudah was promoted. Now, we're not trying to be critical of Reuven, that he was a bad guy. Absolutely not. All of the 12 sons of Reuven were righteous, they were holy, they were tzaddikim. However, not all of them had the exact character traits that we're looking for when it comes to be a king. A king has to be different. Now, what's interesting about this, and I think this is the take-home practical message from the story, is that Yehudah is a king. All future kings will descend from him, and Mashiach as well. But who else descends from Yehudah? All of us. The Jewish people are called Yehudim. It literally is from the tribe of Yehudah, which means every single one of us has the capacity, has the ability to be a leader in our own way and in our own style. To be a leader means to live not for yourself, but to live for other people, for our family, for our community. To be a leader like Yehudah means I don't just feel. I'm not just emotional about particular issues and challenges that are in the community. I act on it. To be a descendant of Yehudah means results matter. It's not just about being on a committee. It's not just about having a meeting and then another meeting. It's about getting the job done. It's not about feeling good because you're part of a committee, because you're part of a team, or because you feel passionately about an issue. It's recognizing that the most important thing is to act and to make a difference for the benefit of another person. To be a descendant of Yehudah means to recognize that your problem is in fact my problem, because that's what it means to be a leader. Your problem is my problem. Even if it's not glamorous, even if it's not exciting, that's ultimately what it means to be a descendant of Yehudah. And in our own lives, there are certainly unbelievable circumstances and scenarios we can act this out, which means our attitude is, what can I do to help? Who can I help? I'm here to serve. Right? If we all acted and behaved in this way, certainly we merit to experience the ultimate descendant of Yehudah, which is the coming of Mashiach may come speedily in our day. All right, hold on a second. I don't know why this is still... Okay, you got two important announcements. Number one, this Saturday night, January 7th, 2023, from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m., we have a Havdalah pajama party at the shul. Come in your PJs for a cozy goodbye to Shabbos, decorate a Havdalah candle to bring home, Jewish movie with popcorn, snacks, and a hot cocoa bar. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, is this activity targeted to me? Or maybe it's more for kids. Yeah, it's probably more for kids. If you have any kids, if you have any grandchildren, maybe you know someone who has kids or grandchildren, please let them know. Fabulous, fun event, a good time this Saturday night. In addition to that, Andrew and Debbie Gorman are sponsoring the Kiddush at the Shul this Shabbos. They are a wonderful young family involved in the Shul, 2 kids who are in Hebrew school. We want to give them support and give them love. So it'd be a wonderful thing if you're able to come to Shul. It's their anniversary. That's why they're sponsoring the Kiddush. And they beat us to it because this Shabbos is my wife and I's 18th anniversary as well. And we were going to sponsor the Kiddush. The Gormans sponsored the Kiddush. But we want to celebrate that they're taking a personal, private event in their life and celebrating it with the whole community. Let's go there, honor them, show them respect, invite other people. It's a great stuff. We need all these young families in Shul, and please show them support. And then finally, we have our Scholar in Residence, our incredible evening weekend that's going to take place next Shabbos, Friday, January 13th, Tales of a Hasidic YouTuber in Arabia. He's traveled to Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, Dubai, all over the world, fascinating experiences, all documented on YouTube. You could watch some of his presentations. Very interesting, very funny, very inspiring. He's seen a lot, and he's going to share what he has learned with us. Right? The next day, on Shabbos day, he's going to speak at the Kiddush, and he's going to tell us about Jewish pride as displayed and expressed in some of the most challenging Jewish communities throughout the world. So go to the shul's website. Please RSVP as well. It's going to be a fascinating weekend. Please come. Please invite your friends as well.